We will not waver. We will not waver. I mean that. Our commitment to Ukraine will not weaken. We will stand for liberty and freedom today, tomorrow, and for as long as it takes. Stand with you. As long as it takes.
And we're going to be there as long as that takes.
Supply Ukraine with critical weapons and equipment. As long as we can.
I can't trust none.
Continue to step up as Canada has with close to $9 billion in aid for Ukraine. But we will, because the cost on Canadians, on our lives, on our world will be so much greater if Putin wins this war that we will and have to stand every single day until Ukraine wins this war.
Straight from the snake pit. Can't trust none.
From notes. Drew attention to the presence in the audience of a Ukrainian hero, he said, a Canadian Ukrainian hero.
Ukrainian-Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
Did the words "fought the Russians during World War II" not ring even the smallest of bells in the thickest of skulls?
Judge me on no count. Bounce from you snakes, say grace, then I roll out.
Did it not occur to them that that meant he was a member of the Nazi army?
It's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized.
Did it not occur to them that they were on the same side as the Russians in World War II?
I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine.
That Canada, that Britain, that America, and Russia were allies during World War II.
Deeply painful for Jewish people. It also hurt Polish people, Roma people, 2S LGBTQI+ people, disabled people, racialized people, and the many millions who were targeted by the Nazi genocide.
Правоохоронцями продовжують очищувати державу від тих, хто досі намагається послаблювати Україну зсередини. Осінь має бути плідною в цьому питанні саме для України.
Didn't start in February last year. The war started in 2014, and since 2014, NATO allies have provided support to Ukraine with training, with equipment. So the Ukrainian armed forces were much stronger in 2022 than they were in 2014. And of course, that made a huge difference when President Putin decided to attack.
NATO was training 10,000 troops per year for 8 straight years. And NATO's efforts to arm and train Ukraine's military explains in good part why it has fared so well against Russian forces in the ongoing war. It's not simply Russian incompetence. It's the fact that we armed and trained those Ukrainian forces and turned them into a formidable fighting force.
Although we provided over $650 million in defensive assistance to Ukraine just this year, last year.
The Ukrainian military has now made significant strides in professionalism and enacted important defense reforms. And again, the United States and our NATO allies have been very involved in that.
In August 2021, and again in December, we sent military equipment to bolster Ukraine's defenses, including javelins and Stingers. And we deployed it.
This was never about a genuine security concerns on their part. It was always about naked aggression.
Flee from my
Every effort to get Moscow to de-escalate its manufactured crisis and resolve its issues through diplomacy.
2021, Secretary of State Tony Blinken and his Ukrainian counterpart signed an important document. It's called the U.S.-Ukraine Charter on Strategic Partnership. That document explicitly builds not just on, quote, the commitments made to strengthen the Ukraine-U.S. strategic partnership by Presidents Zelensky and Biden in 2021. Ukraine began moving rapidly toward joining NATO.
President Biden told President Putin that we were prepared to discuss our mutual security concerns a message that I reaffirmed repeatedly, including in person with Foreign Minister Lavrov.
In addition, Ukraine's military participated in joint military exercises with NATO forces. In July 2021, less than a year ago, Kyiv and Washington co-hosted Operation Seabreeze, a naval exercise in the Black Sea that included navies from 31 countries and was directly aimed at Russia. 2 months later, in September 2021, the Ukraine Army led Rapid Trident 21, which was designed to enhance interoperability among allied and partner nations to demonstrate units are poised and ready to respond to any crisis.
Already been publicly messaging what his asks are. The first is that we would pull back NATO forces from anywhere near their western border. The second is to completely rule out the admission, probably not just of Ukraine, but Georgia as a member of NATO. And the third is to stop arming Ukraine. Of those three conditions that he's publicly messaged already, would the United States agree to any of those three?
All of those would be unacceptable.
Straight from the snake pit. I can't trust none.
He used every forum to try to prevent war, from the NATO-Russia Council to the OSCE, from the UN to our direct channels.
Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov made the point succinctly at a press conference on January 14th, 2022, when he said, the key to everything, I'm quoting Lavrov now, the key to everything is the guarantee that NATO will not expand eastward. Nevertheless, the efforts of Lavrov and Putin failed completely. Secretary of State Tony Blinken responded to Russia's mid-December demands by simply saying, quote, there is no change, there will be no change. Putin then launched an invasion of Ukraine to eliminate the threat he saw from NATO.
To NATO membership for Ukraine and other Eastern European countries. Does the administration view this demand as a valid issue for negotiation?
No, we do not.
Snakes from the snake pit. Kingdom.
Without necessity, this is a premeditated attack.
President Biden had long been committed to bringing Ukraine into NATO and was also super hawkish towards Russian interference. On September 1st, 2021, Zelensky visited the White House, where Biden made it clear in his public statements that the United States was, quote, firmly committed to Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations.
The background was that President Putin declared in the autumn 2021, and he actually sent a draft treaty that he wanted NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement. That was what he sent us. And that was a precondition for not invade Ukraine. Of course, we didn't sign that. The opposite happened.
He wants to, in fact, reestablish the former Soviet Union. That's what this is about.
The odds are significant that we will see a military invasion of Ukraine by Russia in the next 90 days. This was entirely preventable. This disaster is the direct consequence of
Snakes from the snake pit. Kingdom.
made by Joe Biden.
Why you checked that? So he went to war to prevent more NATO across his borders.
We will produce in the United States here 70 billion, not 24, to get them through much. Because one soldier in Ukraine would spend less than 5% of our military budget. 50% of the Russian army has been destroyed by the Ukrainians. They would be at Crimea already if the minister.
I can't trust snakes from the snake pit. Kingdom.
So it is very much in our interest to support Ukraine because they are fighting this war. We're not fighting. So I think we have to engage also in the dialogue with our American colleagues and friends because they have the same interest and way of supporting Ukraine is a very cheap way to make sure that Russia with its regime is not a threat to the NATO alliance. And it's vital to continue that.
It's clear that Russia has they're very desperate. They have already experienced a strategic failure.
Isn't this an opportunity for the United States to step up and take some of these customers away from Russia's catfish?
Absolutely.
Serpent. Let's turn the snake bit. Can't trust none.
Russian military is taking chips from dishwashers and refrigerators to fix their military hardware because there are no semiconductors anymore. Russia's industry is in tatters. Tatters. In tatters.
Und ja, meine Botschaft da, aber meine Botschaft auch jeden Tag in den über 560 Tagen im letzten Jahr ist, wir helfen euch nicht nur, sondern wir stehen an eurer Seite, solange ihr uns braucht.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said at a press conference in Kyiv on Tuesday that he was confident the U.S. would not betray his country by withholding crucial wartime funding.
We are nearly out of money that we need, and we're nearly out of time.
If there's no funding to provide weapons to Ukraine, we're just not in a position to continue to provide weapons to Ukraine. We've asked for that funding. We've received that funding in multiple rounds since the war began in February of 2022, and we have put it to quite remarkable use in saving that entire country from being dominated by Russia. So at this point, it's a pretty simple choice. The Congress has got to step up and provide the funding, because in the absence of that, as
snakes disappear.
What the administration seems to be asking for is billions of additional dollars with no appropriate oversight, no clear strategy to win, and none of the answers that I think the American people are owed.
To Speaker Mike Johnson, imploring him to spend more money in Ukraine. And what they said is they want to revitalize our defense industrial base. It's that's the new acronym, PIB, for the MIC, the Military Industrial Complex. And they sent a list of states that would get money when we spend, money on deadly munitions, because they have to be manufactured in Alabama or Ohio or Texas. And so, they're saying the quiet part out loud.
Virtually all of the security assistance that we've provided to Ukraine, and the security assistance that would be that's in the supplemental budget request, that gets invested right here in the United States. That's where it's spent. Well, in many ways, this is a win-win for us.
That congressmen tend to vote for this stuff because a lot of this federal spending that goes to Ukraine is actually laundered back to the military-industrial complex. And in some ways, not very efficiently, but in some ways it enriches people in their districts and the stockholders, some of whom are congressmen.
But no one ever mentions that we've abetted the killing of an entire generation of Ukrainian men that will not be replaced. To fight a war that they cannot win. They literally cannot win. We prevented a peace deal.
Готові були закінчити війну, якщо ми візьмемо, як Фінляндія колись там, нейтралітет і дамо зобов'язання, що ми не будемо вступати до НАТО. Коли ми повернулися з Істамбулу, приїхав Борис Джонсон до Києва і сказав, що ми взагалі не будемо з ними нічого підписувати, і давайте будемо просто воювати. От як тільки ми закличемо їх сісти, наступного дня вони складуть делегацію і будуть вже сидіти.
And we extended the war and we killed all these people. And so all the ones running around with their little Ukraine flag pins, they're implicated in that. Has anyone apologized?
No, to support this money, you have to be economically illiterate and morally deficient.
In the Black Sea, the Ukrainians have pushed back the Russian fleet.
In the United States, the view is that Ukraine is winning this war. It doesn't sound like that's true.
No, it's a lie. It's not just a misunderstanding, it's a lie.
Putin will be a pariah on the international stage. The sanctions we imposed exceed anything that's ever been done. The sanctions we imposed have generated 2/3 of the world joining us. They are profound sanctions.
That these devastating sanctions are going to be as devastating as Russian missiles and bullets and tanks.
Yes, Russian bullets, missiles, and tanks in Ukraine. Yes, I am.
Wait, it matters. Let's not forget what has been happening almost 2 years now, right? Putin's war right? But that has caused inflation. That has caused prices to go up, right? And so the president took action to make sure gas prices went down, which they have.
Speaking to the Defense Ministry Board on December 21st, 2021, he stated, this is quoting Putin, what they are doing or trying or planning to do in Ukraine is not happening thousands of kilometers away from our national border. It's on the doorstep of our house. They must understand that we simply have nowhere further to retreat to. Do they really think we do not see these threats? Or do they think that we will just stand idly by watching threats to Russia emerge? The United States and its allies, he said, quote, continue to pump the current Kiev authorities full of modern types of weapons, end of quote. He went on to say that if this was not stopped, Moscow, quote, would be left with an anti-Russia armed to the teeth. This is totally unacceptable. Putin's logic should be manifestly clear to Americans in the audience, who have long understood and sure we have a Monroe Doctrine, which stipulates that no great power is allowed to place any of its military forces in the Western Hemisphere.
We have to understand where we are. What was the strategy of the West in that war? I simplify a little bit, but this is the fact. Our strategy was that the Ukrainians will fight and will win on the front line. The Russians will lose on the front line. And that lose will create a change in Moscow, there will be a new leadership, and we can negotiate. Putin is a world crimer, crime maker, whatever, and the new leadership will be acceptable as partner for negotiation to European Union. That was the strategy. We finance, the Ukrainians fight and die. Where we are now, it's obvious that the Ukrainians will not win on the front line. There is no solution to the battleground. Russians will not lose. There will be no political change in Moscow.
War propaganda is very effective because it has been studied for decades. It's a science and it plays on our best emotions. So when we hear, oh, there are these feisty Ukrainians that just long for freedom and democracy and we're there to help and protect them, which, by the way, is exactly how the Iraq War was sold. They're Iraqis, they want to be free of Saddam Hussein. Libyans want to be free of Muammar Gaddafi. Syrians want to be free of the oppression of Bashar al-Assad. And there's even some truth to it. So they use kind of a grain of truth and play on our emotions when the reality, of course, is that we're not there. That war is not protecting Ukrainians. That war is killing Ukrainians and destroying Ukraine. So to the extent that we have empathy for Ukrainians, and of course we should, they're human beings like everybody else, this empathy is being exploited and misdirected to a war that is actually destroying that country. The people paying the biggest cost by far to this war are not Russians, are not Americans, are not Europeans, even though they're all paying a cost. It's Ukrainian.
No, I'm not a poor baby. I'm more reptilian, cold-blooded.
Walk in the shadow of the grey skyscrapers. Visa club cheaper for the holy high capers. Snakes and imitators found by caretakers. Hanging from a roof like a piece of fly paper. Terminate traitors in pissy elevators. Detonate slang, leave Fassi in a crater. Clash like Muhammad Ali, clash Fraser. Clash like Luke Skywalker did Vader. Crush tailor-made MCs for coming whatless. Meat giving ups like a nun coming topless. Razor sharp darts like blades of helicopters. Ditching up the game with the speed of 20 doctors. You don't wanna try test chest cause you pumped up your chest and biceps and grew pecs. Get stressed when a mic gets checked. I die death cause life gets difficult to digest. Hold a mic like a torch in a gold mine. Throw you overboard if you're trying to overthrow mine. Intertwined with crime, the time rolled by. Cats came and stole all my garms off the clothesline. In a world like this, I can't trust none. I can't trust none. In a world like this, I can't trust none.